that we, sorry, I forgot to record everything at the beginning. But we have to save the chat so I can go back and like get a list of all these things that you all are watching. Hintified also is a great show. It's also a first-gen narrative too. Great. So I think we can get started now. Are there any questions at this time before we jump in? Wyatt on Ozark, first gen. This is so great. Okay, so I believe I'm supposed to share my screen, right, Chris? Is that what's happening now? Okay, we're gonna do it. Okay, hang on, everybody. Can you all see my screen? You can? Okay. But I'm not seeing. Trying to get it to. Why is it not like on presenter view? No, I don't know. Here we go. Hey. All right, this was the official welcome here. And so Chris organized this information according to the themes that were most prevalent. And so the top theme as it relates to coronavirus and the way we are all operating right now is academics. So we are interested in hearing from you all, again, whatever your perspective is, whether you're first year in school, whether you're in a doctoral program, your observations of staff, alumni, family members. What are some obstacles that folks are facing with regard to remote learning? And of course, that's a big topic in and of itself, but to unpack it a little bit, might be thinking about access to technology, accommodations that folks may have requested, grading policies. I know on our campus, there was some slight changes with pass, no pass. I'm really curious about you all's experience with that, because I know sometimes many students are unaware of what these policies mean. Like, oh my God, can I go to grad school if I take a class pass, no pass? And so this is a good space to talk that out. And then what your relationships are with faculty members at this time. So I'm gonna stop talking, and if someone wants to, Chris, I'm gonna need you to help me manage this, but if anyone is really interested in jumping in right to this conversation, please let us know and I'll unmute you. I can't tell if anyone is raising their hand or anything. Oh, hang on one second. Oh. Chris, you there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am now unmuted.
Okay. I can hardly see what's happening. So is anyone raising their hand or anything like that?
John is raising his hand.
Okay. John, are you able to unmute yourself? No. Okay.
Sweet. Perfect. Okay.
Hey, John.
Hey. I think one of the main obstacles that I have found, well, first off was housing in the very beginning. I know that this is a safe space, and some of the people in here already know, but my obstacle was I didn't really have like a solid place to go, but VCU was kind enough to be able to go through rounds, even though it was a little bit weird because they were like, no, we're not allowed to have anyone. And then they took off that first round of requests who were allowed to stay there. They made another round where it was only supposed to be students who are housing insecure and international students are allowed to stay on campus. So it worked out pretty well, but one big obstacle, at least when it came to grading, was for like projects, there's a lack of communication, not just with both the professor, but with other students as well. and for people who are first gen and being able to communicate that, there's a big barrier with people who just don't understand as well. So I was just wondering, like, what do you think I should do when confronting others about the fly identity that is hard for others to understand?
John, first of all, thank you for sharing that, your own personal story. I'm going to see if others have comments before I jump in with a response. And so John is wondering, how does one go about communicating with faculty what their needs are at this time? Anyone have some good suggestions for John?
Or if you have a similar experience, even if you're, you know, even if you don't have the answer, if you have a similar experience. Also, if you want to raise your hand, it's hard to see that because in the share screen mode, you can't see all the tiles. So put it on chat if you want to say something. I'm telling you, you're muted.
I see that now. Oh, goodness. I was saying you all could probably see me trying to manage all these things. And so it's hard for me to see if there's anything in the chat or if anyone can recommend a better way to coordinate the conversation. It's just hard for me to see who's saying what, if anything. I can unmute everyone and then, hold on, I think I'm getting some responses here. Oh, thank you. Okay. Chris is helping me here saying if you click on participants, there is a way for people to raise their hands. Okay. I don't see that, Chris. Where is that?
Oh, thanks, Carl. Marissa has a hand up.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for bearing with us. Got it. Thank you. Oh, Marissa, are you able to speak?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. So I'm Marissa. I'm a second year at Emory. A lot of what John said kind of resonated with me, especially I guess trying to convey the fly identity and experience to faculty. I guess well, I'll just share some of what I have been doing. I'm not sure if it's like positive, negative, or whatever, but it's what my response has been. But because of like the uncertainty of everything, of like not telling us if we're going to have a refund, not telling us if we're going to have a stipend, like that uncertainty has just caused a lot of anxiety. So even if like classes are not necessarily getting harder or the material, even if it's like predictable and like trying to, I guess, preserve some sense of order, just the circumstances of everything has just been very anxiety inducing. And I don't know if professors are really understanding that. Like I sent an email today that was like extremely emotional, and like having to continue to like send these extremely emotional emails. It's just like, can't you just understand that this is a very precarious time for everyone? Like, why do I need to specifically explain this to you? And then to have to like, I guess, be at their mercy. That's just how I've been dealing with it. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for acknowledging your own anxiety and recognizing that others are going through it as well. For you, how long have you been back on your campus?
I'm not on campus.
How long has your campus been working remotely?
Last week was our first week. starting on Monday.
Starting on Monday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me stop sharing for a second. How many folks are? I'm just curious. How many of you just completed like 1 week of working remotely? Just 1 week. Others of you been experiencing for a longer period of time? 2 weeks, Jenny. Okay. 2 weeks, Jimmy. 2 weeks. Wow, that's a long time that's a long enough time to have some trends, I would say. I did notice in maybe Chris Sinclair or Chris Lamb, would you like to explain the FLY identity?
Yeah, so FLY is first generation low income. So that's, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean, so you can be, so FLY includes people who are first gen and low income, first gen but not low income, not first gen but low income. And it can even be, I guess, it can even include people whose parents might have gone to college in another country, but haven't gone to college in the United States and don't, haven't been through the higher education system. So it's a very inclusive label, and it's also very flexible.
Sam, I'm wondering, would you mind sharing? Sam wrote that that she has found that being direct and vulnerable with faculty, vulnerable with faculty has been hard, but the only way that she's gotten a positive response. Sam, would you be willing to elaborate on that a little?
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm a graduating graduate student in a higher education program. And for our final projects, we have been sort of working on these longer research papers. And with everything that's happened, so many of us no longer have access to the library. We don't have the capability to interview students like we'd intended to. The IRB process has been delayed and shut down. And in our first town hall that we had with our program, our faculty were just kind of like, wow, this sounds hard. Just keep pushing on, push through. And eventually myself and two others who are also first gen and or low income students were like, we just can't do this the way that we had originally intended. Like, you don't fully understand the anxiety that is coming with all of our uncertainty. And we advocated to have a portfolio option, so that way we could kind of like take a space to reflect and celebrate the successes that we've had through this program. And that finally got through to them. It was really hard. Had to have a lot of really difficult conversations with my faculty, but it was the only way that they were going to respond.
Marissa has her hand raised again. Go for it. I'm trying. There we go.
Sorry, I just didn't unraise my hand. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anyone have, are folks having these conversations in person versus email? And are you finding differences in either of these? Well, I guess not really in person, huh? How are you all doing these conversations? Yeah, Brenda, I would love for you to, if you don't mind, elaborate a little bit on this.
Yeah, I think fortunately I've had a better experience than like other people that I've heard of. So I am a third year graduate student at UCLA in the Chicano Studies program, which I think makes a difference being in an ethnic studies program. But I have sisters, one at which is at ELAC, and the other one, which is East Los Angeles College, a community college here in Los Angeles. And I have another sister at Cal State Long Beach. And they're technically in their second week of online instruction, but one of them is on spring break, but is currently studying for a midterm. And her professor, I think there's still like this essence of like surveillance that is going on, of like lack of compassion that is going on within like different institutions. Her professor's having her take a regular midterm via Zoom to make sure nobody's cheating. I think there's like little options like that I think are showing that a lot of professors are still being like very inflexible And I think whether you're a first-gen low-income student or not, like that already gets filtered, but then the layer of being low income, a lot of students are parenting students. Like, this is one of the many things that they're doing. A lot of people who are low income are living in families where their parts of their families are essential workers, and they're still dealing with that. I know my partner is an essential worker. They're still going out most days and trying to provide, and there's that worry of like being exposed, having compromised. And I don't think people are there's certain people that aren't realizing that there are all these layers of vulnerability and trauma. And I wrote on the chat, like, I think it's really unfortunate that students have to convey that and like convey like these extremes, like show our like poverty porn, right? Or like play these like forms of like trauma Olympics just to like be able to get like some sort of flexibility.
Thank you. Oh, that was amazing. I just want to recap some of it.
Yeah.
First, I don't know if you said era of surveillance, but that part about surveillance is really critical. If you could type out the way you said it, that people are being watched, in other words. I was hoping to model what would be a best practice about giving folks options of being on video or not, because there's all kinds of reasons why people would not show who they are, be recorded at this time. And ideally, we want to operate on like an honor system, or just recognize that and don't make assumptions that, oh, people aren't on video, they're not paying attention, which kind of leads to it's really important to share with faculty examples of what are best practices of online teaching right now, and some classroom etiquette. One thing that we offered at UCLA through our first generation program is a sample email. So we have an electronic newsletter that goes out, and we actually just did like a template for students that exemplified someone attempting to talk to a faculty member. What are the policies this quarter, that type of thing. And so if anyone has had a successful email exchange, I would encourage you to share the email that you wrote with other students, and so that they could borrow from that. Are there other kinds of, oh wait, let me see, there would be, okay, I'll find a way to get this information to you all. But there was a question here. Victor says, I agree with a lot that Brenda is saying. Teachers should not be gatekeepers. Victor is an adjunct as well as meaning teaching part-time, as well as a PhD student. I wonder what I, as a teacher in the department, can do to convince my colleagues that they should not gatekeep or ask students to express vulnerability. One of the things that's striking me, and if people want to jump in, please just raise your hand, is that unfortunately, we cannot assume that our faculty are understanding, and that's breaking my heart a little bit. Anybody else want to chime in about this, though? Jenny.
Okay, so I think for me personally, I've seen like a range of responses in terms of like the kind of just like the compassion that people are exhibiting. So I think that in terms of professors that are still like very much keeping it as like routine as possible given like the circumstances, in some ways I think it's their attempt to try to maintain some form of normalcy. Of course, I do think it is like, this is not a normal time at all. So it's really hard to kind of like balance like, oh, you have classes, you have papers, you have midterms and everything else along with just the state of the current world. But I will say that I do also have professors that are much more understanding. And I just don't think it's not something I was really expecting, honestly, because I feel like in this kind of like higher education sphere, a lot of times professors are thinking like, this is just how it is. Like, you should be able to like get through it no matter what's going on. But I do have professors that have reached out and said like, even though Trinity does have a policy for like pass fail now, they can like make their own decisions as faculty about whether they want their classes like as a whole to be pass fail. But you still have like the option to switch back to grading if you like feel like your transcript needs it for whatever reason. But But I guess like, yeah, to like kind of sum it up, I would say that it's really hard to elicit like empathy and sympathy from someone if they just don't
Have it.
have it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess at the same time, like the professors that are still teaching as normal as possible are still like leaving a window open to say like if you have extenuating circumstances, like please reach out. But I think it really does put the burden then on you if you do have those circumstances to have to say, hey, this is my situation. Can I have some help for it?
Yeah, thank you for that, Jenny. Matt has their hand raised. Go for it.
Hi. I'm Matt Hurwitz. So I direct a program for first-generation students here at UMass Lowell, and actually work with Julie Nash on that. So LT, I'll let Julie know that you said hi and give her a shout out. I also teach, and so I just want to say to all the students in here, I'm really sorry to hear that a number of you have struggled with conveying to your faculty the particular circumstances and that you're dealing with and how those are impacting your ability to get work done. That shouldn't be happening across the board. And it's really frustrating for me to hear that as someone who always believes that students should be advocating for themselves and that faculty should be teaching with compassion, and especially now more than ever. So I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope that all of you are having also some positive experiences. I know here at UMass Lowell, I think that more of our faculty are demonstrating that compassion and understanding and flexibility, but I'm sure at my campus as well, there's also those that are struggling with that. And of course they're also trying to adapt on the fly to changing circumstances. So I just really wanted to say to you all that I'm sorry that that's something that you guys are facing as a challenge, because it really shouldn't be right now. That should be the last thing you should be worrying about, is convincing your faculty that your circumstances have changed and therefore you are not going to be the same student that you were before all of this happened.
Yeah, Catherine, I'm going to call on you next. And Matt, I completely agree with you, considering we're all going through it, right? It's not like the students are and the faculty are not.
Yeah.
And I know some faculty as well are also homeschooling, or at least have children in the home with them as well. So we kind of see them in the background. But thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, LT.
Mm-hmm. Catherine. There we go.
Hi, my name's Catherine. I am a graduate student at the University of Virginia, and I did my undergrad with Liberty University Online. I also almost completed a master's degree with Western Governors University Online. So I wanted to share, when it comes to transitioning to online classes, I have experienced that previously in an actual online format. And so with my professors, one of my professors wanted to take the class and split it up into 2 times a week rather than meeting 1 time a week. And I actually talked to her after doing this for 2 weeks, how that was actually more for us rather than having it being less time for us. And so she actually did accept that feedback, and she did it in an anonymous way through our chat board. And so that was very helpful, that we could actually say, actually, this isn't working for us. And she pivoted back to meeting 1 time a week. And then my other professor went to asynchronous learning. And so just if people aren't familiar with that terminology, synchronized learning is more so the Zoom type of conversations where you have to meet live during a class, versus asynchronized is when a professor may record themselves and you can watch it at any time. Most online formats are actually asynchronized. So I've been having conversations with professors about that they don't have to do synchronized learning in order for it to be the same value during this time. And so I think that's been interesting as well, is just having that practical experience being an online student and sharing what that looks like. So for those who talked about having the proctored exams through Zoom, the reason that Western Governors University did that differently is because they were able to actually send us as students the appropriate webcam beforehand and not have us use our laptop webcam, because the webcam can't see everything in the room. And so it's very different to try to pivot to a actual proctored exam during this time. And so I'm sorry for those that are experiencing that frustration, because it really isn't something that should add a burden to you during this time. And it's possible to obviously not cheat, but I understand why people do want to have proctored exams. I see both sides of that argument, but yeah, I do think this is where we can learn from those who've already been doing online classes as well.
Muted myself. Catherine, I was saying, as always, I appreciate your thoughtfulness. My daughter, her senior year of high school, did online learning, and it was such a great experience for her. So I just, for those of you who don't have that experience, know that you're not getting optimal or quality. More than likely, you're not getting an optimal or quality experience just because there just wasn't enough time for that to happen. Matt did have a follow-up question. I don't know if, did you still want to ask it, Matt, about synchronous versus asynchronous? Go for it.
Thanks. Yeah, and I just want to emphasize a point you just made, LT, which is that really what's happening now is really not online learning. I forgot the phrase people are using now, but it's not online because it's not really intentional and designed the way that it's supposed to be. So even though it's moved to online, it doesn't have the kind of thoughtful course design that really should be happening with true online learning. But the question I actually had was, so we're in the midst of calling each and every one of we have 350 freshmen who are in our Riverhawk Scholars Academy First Gen program. So we're calling all of them to check in and see how they're doing, let them know about some resources that are available to them. And I'm hearing really mixed things from students about how they're feeling about synchronous versus asynchronous classes. In my classes, I made a choice not to have a synchronous and any synchronous learning happening. And to me, that was a best practice for the benefit of students because of the challenges of having to be all online at the same time and the demands on people's time. But I'm actually hearing from some students that there's actually more, sorry, I'm teaching asynchronous, I meant to say. I'm confusing my own terminology. So I'm not asking students to be online at the same time. So I'm doing asynchronous, but a lot of my colleagues that has surprised me are doing synchronous. And some of my students that we've been calling have said that they actually like that, and some said they hate it. So I'm just curious, like I can't get a good read on like, and maybe it's just one of those things where it differs from person to person and setting to setting, but how do you guys feel about, like, do you like having to be online at a set time with your professor and your peers, or do you not like that? Like, do you guys have preferences around that?
Brenda.
Yeah, I think for me, it really depends on the class. I'm taking 3 seminars right now, and 2 of them are doing like a version of synchronous teaching. One of them is doing asynchronous, but the one class that is doing asynchronous is is more of a workshop style class. So it's a class to prepare you to either write a publication or to draft your dissertation proposal. So there's already a lot of like work that you would have done outside of the classroom. So it makes sense to not meet and just to meet every 2 weeks to check in on progress. Whereas the other classes that are meeting online weekly were really discussion-based classes to begin with. And for me, at least, I like the discussion-based aspect of it when it's necessary for readings, but those classes have also cut back on the writing workload. So as of before, there would have, that class would have required like 35-page final paper or like 2 papers. Now the paper is either optional or it's been changed to like a blog or a video post, something that makes more sense for the time and is less demanding. So I think it really depends on the structure of the course that you're teaching.
John's going to go next, but I do want to acknowledge Sansia's comment here in the chat that it's been overwhelming for her to keep up with all of the recorded lectures and emails. And I don't know about you all, but I am doing more work than I've done before. And I think there's sometimes an assumption that students or folks are doing less work. But John, we'd love to hear from you.
Wait a minute. Okay, it was like unmuted. So I kind of enjoy having the classes online and everything moving over, only because of kind of like time management and balancing. Because usually what would happen would be like 2 classes back to back, and then I would have to travel all the way over to work, and then after that have a meeting. But now it's kind of just like I am in one place. I don't really have to like worry about being late because I know that like I'm always gonna be on like Filipino time. But just in general, like it kind of makes it even harder because I'm always just on the go and that I don't get the break that I need. Whereas now it's kind of just like I have the time to kind of just slow down and relax and kind of be at ease with myself. One thing that I did notice though with like classes going to synchronous and asynchronous though was that with the teachers being prepared or not, like some were just like, you know what, they threw their hands up and they're just like, we just want a paper at the end of the year. And then others still want to foster that type of community because like 2 of my classes are project based and I have to work with other people, and like that is kind of where everything falls down because either they're extremely receptive to being able to help the students or they're kind of just like talk amongst yourselves, see what happens, and then go off. So it's kind of like a mixed bag, I'm not gonna lie, but I don't know. I want to hear other people's views on this one.
You know, I think that's fair. It's like the year of mixed bag, right? And then the other thing I'll say too, something that I've been talking about before this even hit is this myth of meritocracy. Like, oh, the harder you work, you'll be duly rewarded for that. And that is an inherent myth. And now it's really being exposed for what it is. Because like you just said, John, people are like, whatever, I just want a paper at the end. Now that's going to be hard for a lot of people to accept. To be like, oh my God, I didn't do X, Y, and Z. Well, yeah, it's true. And guess what? You know, at the end of the day, you'll see what happens. We just know that there are other things outside of the classroom that are impacting academics. So we do need to move on. Those of you have your hand raised, if you could move that comment about academics to the chat, because one of the key themes that came up was food insecurity or security, and we wanted to ask you all about that. First, from the perspective of those of you who may be continuing to live on campus and having what that access is like to your food service, and then also what's going on your campuses regarding the dining hall workers. And I'm going to let you. We'll come back to that one, but if folks could first give us a bird's eye view, what you're hearing, what you know of about food security on campus. Anybody still in the residence hall, or is everyone here home? Or just not in a residence hall, I should say. No, okay. Any ideas of what's happening with those food service workers? So this is relevant for a number of reasons. One, because there's so many depleted residence halls, those workers are not working. And so some institutions are handling that differently. I know at the University of Virginia, they released many of those employees they were on contract and without warning were terminated. And there's been some fundraising around those efforts. At my campus, our campus right now, no one's being terminated. It's also important to bring up these workers because many of those folks tend to be our own allies as first-gen students, graduates, and professionals. And many of us have formed relationships with those workers, dining, maintenance, food service, etc. So we just wanted to make sure, since folks did bring it up in the forum as being relevant to them, to offer some space for that. Let's see. Brenda says, Brenda is not, hold on, I'm sorry. Many things are going into the chat. Brenda is not on campus, but our institution has moved all students to on-campus apartments, providing food via food pantry for students. This service is available 6 days a week. And then Marissa says, Marissa's comment was about the asynchronous classrooms, and that there tends to be more emphasis on holding you accountable for covering material. And in some ways, the university or professors not realizing that sort of the quality of things have diminished. But you all have any thoughts you want to add to this conversation about food security, access to food, any positive examples that you've seen? Oh, okay, Catherine. Okay. I don't know. Catherine, is your hand raised? Where are you, Catherine? Catherine, did you have a response to the food service workers?
Well, You know, you've basically already covered it. Yes, there is a GoFundMe that was started by a professor. Hopefully, UVA usually responds after enough media attention is given to them. So I get to say that as a UVA graduate student. And then my concern was that the food pantry has been shut down at UVA. And so I'm concerned for the students like myself who do not have a car. And so whenever I go to the grocery store, I do still have financial ability to pay for my groceries, but I can only carry like one like bag from the
Mm.
grocery store to my apartment. So like I can't do weeks worth of grocery shopping because I don't have a car. So that's more of my concern with those that don't have access to a food pantry on grounds, is that if they don't have a car, they're being recommended to go to somewhere else in the city of Charlottesville. Well, how do they have access to get there?
Mm. I'm writing this down because it's all the little things, right? How about in general? How about what is it like to work from home and this time? So some of you may have already been commuting to campus and some of you have not, but all of us are experiencing this for the first time. Can you, one of the challenges I've heard about, someone mentioned it already, maybe it was Brenda, that talked about what does it mean when you have family in the home with you? Those some folks may be taking care of younger siblings. Some of us may be taking care of our own parents. Would you all mind talking a little bit about what that's been like for you? If anyone wants to raise their hand and jump in. How are your parents, your family members? Do they think of you as just being on Facebook all the time, or how are you able to study? Anyone want to jump in? John, I feel like you have something to say. I'll share this comment from Brianna, which I think is really profound, Brianna, that, hang on one second, let me go back and read. Parents are unsupportive and don't see it as work because they work in manual labor. That actually gives me goosebumps. This is something that I've been bringing up to my colleagues for a long, long time about what work means in different communities. A lot of it is dependent on social class. And for some folks, including, so my grandfather was a postal worker. My grandmother took care of children and got paid under the table. And my own crisis of identity occurred being first gen and being in a PhD program where I hate to say this, but sometimes our work feels a lot like this coronavirus situation. We're kind of socially isolated already. And I felt like the work I was doing wasn't real work compared to the like physical labor. And when that work is back in the home and folks are under more stressful conditions, that can be heightened. Are other folks, are you all feeling supported, not feeling supported, whatever you're willing to share, of course? Victor mentioned homeschooling. I have begun to homeschool my sister-in-laws. It's basically another job in addition to teaching college students and home studies. And if I recall, Victor is an adjunct faculty member. I think I got that right. Erica mentions living in a small apartment with family and hard to find a private space. Yeah, how are you all doing with Wi-Fi, computer access? Wait, what's this comment about experts? Oh, yeah. So John had written here, I see a lot of parents becoming like experts in COVID and causing more anxiety for students. Like your own parents, John? Yeah. Experts. Like I saw that in quotes. Okay, I think there's another message down here. Marissa mentions being isolated from family right now because of that's really tough. Because of the positive cases from peers on campus. their mom is immunocompromised, and it's rough being alone. Marissa, we so appreciate, first of all, I hope this has been a form of community for you here today, and know that other people are going through something similar. I know one of my mentees at UCLA, also first gen, she was going back and forth quite a bit about should she go home, should she not? Her parents are elderly. Many of us have our parents and family members are among those most vulnerable that are identified, right? And so there was a challenge for and ultimately she ended up going home because many of us are also responsible for some things too. Victor mentioned working from home, living with in-laws, along with brother-in-law, studying and playing online games. Yeah, so clearly Wi-Fi is limited. This also circles back to conversation we had earlier about, well, how much of that do you want to say to a faculty member, right? We don't necessarily want to tell all our business. No, we sometimes don't think professors want to hear a sob story. We don't want to give a sob story either. At the same time, there's that fine line of also wanting to acknowledge your actual reality at the same time. So it's a challenge, y'all. I get it. I just want you to know we hear you. Okay, any other, let me see. We have two more predetermined topics, and then we'll open it up for just open conversation. But one of them, we've been dancing around it, but it is about financial, it's come up, but about financial security or insecurity. Really interested, so both in terms of what you may have had before all these stay-at-home, stay-in-place policies. Were folks working and then no longer working? What was that like for you? Did you have an on-campus job or not? And then looking ahead a little bit, this is around the time where people will be starting to hear back from internships, and my daughter had her summer plans all laid out. We'd love to hear what that experience has been like for you as well. Anyone want to chime in about that? Brenda Lara immediately jumped in and said summer job security has been difficult for grad students. The summer's really up in the air for a lot of folks. Did anyone have a campus job that they no longer have anymore? Yeah, so I saw Jenny raise her hand. Jenny, would you mind sharing how that impacted you? Go for it.
So I go to Trinity. I forgot to mention this. I'm a sophomore at Trinity College in Hartford. And so my job on campus is actually singing in our like college choir. So we sing at like events, like for the school, like graduation, and then what's it called? Convocation, I think. So when like the first years come in, as well as just like we have like rehearsals throughout the school year for like singing on Sundays at the chapel service that we have. So obviously it's not really something you can do over the internet, especially in terms of like people's lagging connections, people don't have access. Also just like you have to be like in the space to do it. So there's definitely, I think, even not so much in like a financial sense, but just like a sense of community, I think has kind of been lost. Like we still try and keep in touch, but I would say it's just like very different to have like that kind of structure as well. Like always having Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Sundays, like 2 hours of like you have to be somewhere, to now coming home and being like, oh, like I don't have anything to do. And like trying to kind of find a way to feel like you're still kind of being productive, but also like kind to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I was trying to bring some more light in here.
You're good.
Well, you know what? So Jenny, thanks for sharing that. There's not a ton of research on it, but research does show, particularly for first-gen students, that especially a campus job does a thing that you just said, which is build community. And then when it's abruptly taken away, how do you maintain those bonds? So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Catherine had mentioned in the chat that in thinking about life post-graduation, that no job could equal possible homelessness for her. Tyrika, hopefully if I'm mispronouncing your name, let me know. I'm wondering if you could comment. You wrote that your institution, everyone's still being paid for their on-campus jobs. Would you mind elaborating on that? What institution is that?
Yeah, sure. So I go to Catholic University of America, which is in DC. I don't know much about the specifics because I don't have an on-campus job, but according to my friends who do and just other classmates, that they are still being paid, I believe it's biweekly for their on-campus jobs.
Good job, Catholic University. Is that true for other campuses that you all are aware of? Work-study students still being paid? I'm hearing mixed things. I'm hearing it kind of depend at my institution. Marissa, what's up?
Yeah, it kind of depends on, I say, like who you're doing work study with. Like I know I have friends who are doing work study through like the LGBT Life, who like work within that center. And so there's still options to like work with discussion groups and getting like paid per session that they do. I know someone else who still has like a secure work study job, but she said it's because whoever was like advising her or whoever was over the program was like, you guys are just not gonna put like my people out of work like this. And so really went to the bat for them, so.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for that. But like, listen to how we're saying like, oh, I heard somewhere in the distance, there's a rumor about somebody that was able to keep their job.
Right.
And the role of an institutional agent to do, that's the higher ed term, right? That there's someone advocating for students as opposed to a policy that's in place. And folks really needing to work and be creative. Tyrika, there was a follow-up question to you about, do you know if that policy applies through the summer?
I'm not sure about the summer, but I did receive an email from our fitness gym place that they're opening applications for the summer. So, excuse me, presumably those who work or plan to work during the summer hopefully will still get paid.
And so it sounds like people just don't know right now. Yeah. Chris Sinclair, if you all take a look, scroll back up through the chat, had talked about a potential fellowship opportunity. So take a look at that as well. Trying to think, was there anything else related? I saw some thumbs up, Chris. And then before we open it up to you, we also wanted to ask about, and again, there's all kinds of financial implications. So we're not cutting it off, but we did want to cover sort of how communication is going. How are you feeling communication is going between yourselves and your institution? What's going well? What's not going well? Let me see, what are there timelines? Probably not, but we're going to ask it anyway. How's the social media going? I don't want to walk away depressed, so someone start us off with something good that your campus is doing. Watch no one answer. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, Nori, hey, go for it.
Hi, so I would like to share. So I'm from University of Maryland. I am a junior and I'm working for the department in engagement. And so I still work, and they have been very like supportive and flexible. So the time that I work here, like I only work like 4 hours a week, and the projects that I'm giving is something that, you know, is very resourceful for students, and also like for myself, that they're checking up on us, making sure that we are good. Also, we have a platform that, you know, share like any resource that possibly from a staff, from a student can use. And so that's been very useful as well, like trying to find like books online as well. So I'm really glad and fortunate to work in the department that I'm working for.
Well, it so happens that I'm not sure if Corey is Nori's supervisor, but certainly a work colleague. Corey, would you mind picking up on what Nori was talking about?
Hi, sure. So Nori and I do work together, and we also have Fatima here as well.
Okay,
and
College Park.
Yes, we all work in the engagement team, And I had actually kind of been staying as quiet as I could because I wanted to let the students be able to have a chance to speak. But I've been really fortunate that my entire team and I are very much on the same page of wanting to make sure that we ask students how they're doing first before we assign a task. And something that one of my really great colleagues, her name is Laura, she gave us all kind of a list of questions just to say, are folks eating? Are they, how is everyone sleeping? And just kind of learning a few of those things before we start asking about how's school. And so I think that's been really helpful also. And I have to say, for some of the students that I've heard on here, that also you're welcome to reach out if I can help in some way. I know that was kind of something I was thinking of sending each person. I'd be happy to help you get connected to folks on your campus. I can't remember who said they're headed to Rutgers, but I definitely know a lot of folks there. But certainly, I know that Fatima also might jump in. And we also have been a part of a learning community where we actually did dry runs with students just to kind of practice and see what Zoom and everything else would be like. Because I think something that's really important that maybe we haven't chatted about is students with learning differences and what it means to go online for that also.
Thank you so much for that, Corey. And if you don't mind, would you put your contact information in the chat? Chris Lamb is up next, but I did want to acknowledge many of you wrote comments about too many emails. Okay, so we gotta send that up the chain. Go ahead, Chris, and then Fatima will be next.
Yeah, so I didn't actually have anything to say. I just wanted to get back on the unmuted so I could help coordinate. Just a couple people who raised their hands and then since lowered, but I just wanted to make sure that they actually didn't change their mind, but Sam had raised their hand earlier. Obviously Fatima has their hand raised up as well, but then also Yoshimar had a comment about CWRU being responsive to student opinion only after there was backlash, and I was interested in details on that.
Okay, we get some snaps for that, some head nods. Fatima, I'm gonna unmute you.
So hi everyone, I'm Fatma and I work in the student engagement office with Nori and Corey. So I teach one of the classes that's a learning community, and one of the things that I've seen over there is all of the issues that we're talking about. One of the main things is some of the students are not financially as secure, we've talked about. So when we open that class, we always do like a check-in where we're checking in with everybody on how they're doing. And that can be anything that they want to talk about. So we have heard things about, financial issues. We've heard things about people not doing well in online classes because the shift has not been good for them. We've heard things about people, struggling with their living situation a little bit. And at that point in time, we just sort of try and provide community and then tell them that they can reach out to us after and see in what way we can help. We've had a student who told us that their parent had COVID-19 and they weren't here. So we sort of made their, we've given them options on how they can still stay in touch with class, and we'll figure something out in terms of grading. But as a student myself, I'm a first year doctoral student. I feel that and because of where I work in student engagement, I think I'm a lot more empathetic to the situation of students as opposed to faculty in general, because when I'm taking classes, and I'm taking both synchronous and asynchronous classes, I feel that my workload has not lessened, has increased instead. And then with me trying to offer all of this assistance that I can in whatever capacity that I have, I just feel like I am getting overworked at the same time. So I think there are like a lot of different issues at work at the same time.
Thank you so much for that. We're taking notes over here because we want to summarize and share as best we can. I'll say this again later, but I think it's a good time now for me to share that I do moderate a national Facebook group called Empowering First Generation College Students. I know some of you are already familiar, but if you aren't already, it's been a great resource for many of us who may feel disconnected across the country. But it's a good, I know I'll be sharing after this, telling folks there, many of whom are staff and faculty, what we're hearing from you all. So thank you for that. And I'll write out the name. I know Chris had a few things you wanted folks to maybe elaborate on. I know like something with
Yeah, Yoshimar had a comment a little bit earlier about CWRU's responses. So I just wanted Yoshimar to elaborate a little bit on that.
on whose response, Chris?
Yoshimar, can you raise your hand?
Okay, got it.
Hi guys, how's it going?
Good.
Great. So one thing that I've noticed throughout the entire the university response to the crisis has been that administrators and faculty are making decisions without student input, and students don't have a place at the table to raise concerns, and it becomes very frustrating when we do get just like a wave of emails about new decisions and new policies, because there's no way for us to advocate for ourselves while they're being made. So we must resort to organizing after and communicating our dissatisfaction with the policy. And it's extremely difficult to do that because we're not around each other, and most of us are not in the same time zone. So organizing and communicating and trying to persuade other people about why we should support a certain policy as opposed to another has become just like a very difficult task thus far. And I think the student government is doing an okay job of facilitating that, but as a student, it is frustrating when it seems like we're not being listened to.
Can you remind us what your institution is? I got you. Go ahead.
Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland.
Right. Got it. Okay, I will, and Brenda can back me up on this. So I'm going to use UCLA as an example. This was regarding commencement. Students found out via Twitter that the UCLA commencement was going to be virtual. And then people are like, what the hell, right? An email followed that. And then following that email was another email saying, oh gosh, we're sorry we didn't include you in this decision making. Can you fill out a poll and tell us how you feel about the decision that we made and told you about twice already? So don't do that, right? That's the negative example. But I think it supports your point about, and that's a note I made, and make sure students are part of the decision-making process. And then Tim, I love your eye roll to virtual commencement. I don't know what it means either. Do you all know what virtual commencement is? And how are you feeling about graduate? Do you have graduating folks here? By chance? I mean, eventually you will, but anyone that was scheduled to graduate this term, yeah. Tim, are you interested in commenting? Oh yeah, we have a couple. Erica, Brianna, Tim, I'm gonna unmute you because you're saying some stuff over there. Get it out.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
My name's Tim, and I'm a senior at UMass Amherst. It's an incredibly frustrating experience to be a graduating senior, being first generation, low income, and being someone I have 6 younger siblings that are supposed to come after me through college. Somebody who my entire family has lived in homelessness for a very long time. And to now get to the point that we've been fighting for a very long time, for the threats of a commencement postponement or a commencement to not happen at all, in combination with this online class transition, with students not being paid, students suffering food insecurity that are in similar situations as myself. On our campus, there's a lot of advocacy around like labor issues, and students are only being paid for 2 weeks of time, which is a big issue. But like this is especially disastrous for seniors who are facing all these complex issues, but then the payoff is no longer there. And then this doesn't even resolve what learning will be like next year if this continues for students that are going to continue or those entering grad school. So yeah, virtual commencements are wicked terrible, and I will not attend if they make it virtual.
You said so much more than that, Tim. I'm so glad that you shared a lot of what was going on in your head there. I guess I had a feeling about it, not just the virtual commencement. It's like I was on a live webinar the other day, and I said, this is impacting the entire pipeline, academic pipeline. This isn't about just seniors graduating. This is about, like you had said already so eloquently, how you're learning. What are your job prospects like after you graduate? What the hell is a pass, no pass? What does that mean? You know, there's just so many things that are happening right now. Again, I just want to say that to every single one of you who've been willing to share what your personal experiences are like. And I know that's not an easy thing to do. I know that trust has to be built first, and community is a part of it. And so any ways in which you find to continue to connect with the people here or with me, you can just Google me. You'll be able to track me down pretty easy. But I hope that part of these conversations can continue. This is, it's so complex. There's not going to be easy answers after this, is what I suspect. We do want to open it up. I'm just going to say, I'm going to unmute everybody and then just say, if you are not talking, to mute yourselves. And then if you want to talk, we'll just find a way to, just raise your hand or something like that. But I'm pushing a button that says unmute all. I don't know that it worked though. Are you able to unmute yourselves now? You're good. All right. This is my first time, moderating in this fashion. So I'm learning along with you. But what did you all come here to talk about? Is there some? Oh, thank you, Jimmy. Jimmy says I'm doing a great job. And I don't know Jimmy, and Jimmy did not pay me any money. So thank you for that. But if there are some things on your mind, we want to hear from you, sincerely. Yeah, Nori has the distinction of being the first person Nori was here at 30 minutes before this started, so go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So as I mentioned earlier, that I am a student from University of Maryland. So one of my main concern is that I'm under a scholarship, and that puts a lot of anxiety to me as well. I know the university changed their grading system to a pass and fail, but still, what about the students that are on probation? This semester was their semester to definitely bring their grades up. And then another concern of I'm also thinking of grad school, and that's another thing of I don't want to do pass and fail, and I kind of I decided to take a difficult, most challenging classes in my business program. So I'm trying to should I talk to my professor, or what should I do in that aspect?
Yoshmar, you were saying yes and yes. Was that in response to Nori? No? Can we talk about pass no pass for a bit? Okay, so you're planning to go to business school?
Yes.
Okay, and you're concerned about how that looks?
Yes, I am in the business program, and I'm still planning to continue to do business for my master's. Yep. So, yeah.
Okay, I will not go first because Matt and Chris have their hands raised, and if they don't say what I was going to say, just remind me. All right, Matt, what did you want to say?
So that's such a great question, and one of my roles here at UMass Lowell is also part of our faculty senate and our executive committee. And so a big part of our conversation, we also moved to a model to let students have the option for any of their courses to take those as pass, no pass, or to remain as graded courses. And so we really think that there's going to really be a national understanding that this semester will have an asterisk on it for all student transcripts. Whether there's an actual asterisk or not, I think it's still to be determined, but I think there'll be a shared understanding that students will not be judged based on their decisions around whether they opt in for no pass during the semester. So that was a big part of our conversation. I do think there's also a lot of variation from discipline to discipline and career field to career field. So I think talking with people that you trust about this when you're making those decisions is also really important, because sometimes, like for example, on our campus, we have a strong nursing program, and we know those students are going to be making some different decisions than I teach in our English department, than our English department our English majors might. But we hope that there'll be, like I said, kind of a shared understanding among all institutions of higher ed that this semester will be perceived differently when people are being evaluated for future prospects.
Thanks, Matt. What did you want to add, Chris?
Yeah, there's so much I want to add about so many things I've heard. But just, I think I want to take what Matt said a step further. This is one of the things that Flip National has been sort of grappling with and thinking about in trying to make recommendations. We've been kind of working behind the scenes and trying to influence institutions' decisions about how they react to things. But one thing with respect to universal pass-fail or pass-fail-pass is that I think it goes further than just, we're hoping that it goes further than just this one semester on the part of institutions. I think hopefully, given the fact that COVID-19 has affected the entire world, all of society in such a profound way, that this starts a conversation about how we're evaluating students' academic performance writ large. It gives a better understanding of the fact that, you know what, you can have something that happens in your personal life that affects your academic performance. It's not just the sum total of what you do in the classroom. There are things that happen outside the classroom that can affect what happens in the classroom. And then so that hopefully that discussion extends to employers. So even if you're not looking to go to grad school and you have to submit a transcript, and employers starting to ask those questions about, like, that GPA, we see that GPA, and as an employer, generally speaking, they just see that GPA and, hey, 3.5 and above, that means a certain thing. But if you're below that, or if you don't meet whatever threshold they want, then maybe there's some reason behind that. And maybe there'll be more of a nuanced conversation and more of a realization that that GPA in and of itself is not a prime indicator of ability or mastery of material. Maybe it'll be a realization that the average CEO's GPA is 2.9. And again, in getting back to universal pass fail in terms of the equity for the student, it's even, I think, a lot of what we're thinking about, a lot of what we're hearing from students, because this is the conversation that's going on with a lot of students at a lot of schools that we're speaking with and dealing with right now, is they feel that even opting into pass-fail is inequitable. Because if you are someone that has the luxury of being, you're sent away from campus and you're in a stable living situation, you have stable finances, your family is not hurting financially as much as everyone else, you have a stable situation, everyone's healthy, they have a better ability to kind of focus on schoolwork and perform better. And so they're at an advantage as opposed to someone who's going back into a not so stable situation. Or if you are going back to a high risk environment, let's say you are at a school that didn't have like a large risk or a large outbreak, and then they close the campus preemptively. From a public health standpoint, it's probably the right decision, but you get sent back to New York City, which is the epicenter right now. And then all of a sudden, sometime between now and the end of the semester, God forbid, you or someone in your family becomes infected. So now at first you opt in thinking, oh, well, I'm going to opt in because I think I'm doing well in this class. I'll get a good grade. It'll boost my GPA. Now all of a sudden you or someone gets sick. That affects you. And then that affects your performance. And so I think there's something going around, basically, kind of, I'll just read from it because it kind of, it talks about Chad and Sabrina. They both have 3.5 GPAs, and then they talk about the decisions they make with respect to opting into a pass-fail versus opting into a letter grade. And maybe, and again, to the point of Nori's question, I guess, they're both making decisions thinking like, hey, I want to go to law school, or I want to go to graduate school or professional school. They basically say, you know, 1 week after, you know, one week after opting into passing or letter grades, someone in her family gets sick. Stress and anxiety really affect her performance, and all the while she has all this work to do. And so that can be something that affects it. And so they end up making the point that basically any optional policy will stratify them based on their resources, and that's not okay. And so universal pass-fail is really the only equitable way to make sure that people who are affected by the outbreak and affected by the pandemic to varying degrees are still on an equitable playing field. But that has to be combined with or coupled with an understanding on the part of not only higher education institutions like Matt said, but employers and the like, that, you know what, we need to revisit.
Chris, we got two other people that want to chime in on this topic. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Just
move it to the comments. Move it to the chat. Okay.
So just to put a point on it, just really revisit how we're evaluating people, and what that GPA means, and not, you know, just treating people as a sum total of their grades, and asking more nuanced questions in light of the fact that everybody is experiencing now an extenuating circumstance that's affecting everything.
Thanks, Chris. Marissa, how about you?
So the point that really resonated with me that you just said, Chris, is this reevaluating what it means, I guess, to evaluate someone's mastery of material or whatever. I'm in a position in which I was struggling before all of this happened. My grades were not necessarily struggling, which is also like its own little thing of like, my grades are fine, but like my mental health looks like this. I'm eating like this, I'm sleeping like this. So overall unhealthy, but the GPA is fine. And then you like switching basically everything with this COVID situation. It's like, what does it mean to continue to be passing? What does it mean to continue to be getting good grades? Or in one class, I'm really like, I feel like I could fail at this point. But I sent an email to our dean, and in the email, I basically posed a question of like, what does it mean to be passing when you have family members that are dying, you have friends that are sick, you have eviction, you're dealing with homelessness? Like, what are you asking students to prioritize by passing these classes if all of this is happening? You're like, it creates this, basically school is the only priority and all of your values mean nothing at that point. So I've been, on my school, we've been advocating for the AA system.
What is the AA system?
So basically everyone gets an A or an A minus, and that's given at the discretion of the professor, but it's a universal pass system where just everyone gets A's essentially, so A or A minus. And so I guess the reason that I feel so strongly about the AA system is because no one is allowed to fail during this time. Like that, it just makes no sense to me. It seems so negligent to all of the circumstances that are going on to fail someone right now. Yeah. Oh, you're muted.
Chris Lamb.
Yes. Marissa brought up a really good point about mental health. I actually wanted to ask folks on the call, how is your mental health going, and what sort of supports and resources have you been subscribing to? So there was I lurk on Latanya's Facebook group a lot, empowering first generation college students, and there was a question there like a week and a half ago, super random, that got quickly buried, about mental health like what mental health resources are schools doing, especially because you've gone from like in-person counseling to virtual counseling, and often the counselors are not accredited to work with students who are like out of state. And but so in addition to that, I've also heard of, and this is going to betray my oldness, but Zoom parties are a thing now, and I've heard students are undergrads are participating in gigantic Zoom parties, and that is has been a way of maintaining community and maintaining sanity. Putting it out there, could we do a first and low income students like an aligned students like Zoom party, or and make it open to like grad students, or like a grad student only Zoom party? I don't know. The possibilities are endless, but just throwing it out there.
Yeah, Sam, I see your hand raised. I believe I can tie the last thing to the mental health, also giving you all a moment to process that question. So back to just pass, no pass. This is me with my advisor hat. Nori, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, Nori, I'll take you out of it. Oftentimes when I'm talking to students, the assumption that they make is that that graduate schools see a pass and will think, oh, you didn't work hard that quarter. You were weak. There's a reason why you're taking a class, pass, no pass, and the assumption is that it was for a negative reason. That actually is not how it is viewed, with the exception of medical schools. And I'm not a medical school expert, but I believe medical schools actually assign a grade to a pass class. Now, if you don't pass, that's failure. But if you pass, it just is not factored into your GPA at all. What I've seen students do when it comes to pass, no pass, is actually be very strategic and think, oh, I'm taking really tough classes this term, and I want to ease up a little bit on one of them and just pass. And they actually protect their GPA by being selective about pass, no pass. The issue really is, if you're what schools don't want to see is a whole pattern of you taking classes pass, no pass. But if you're selectively taking classes, that's no problem at all. That actually shows you understand how academic policies are functioning, and that tends not to be first-gen students, to be honest. So the folks who I see taking advantage of it tend to be folks whose parents have college degrees, or they're in regular communication with their advisors. So I heard you say, oh, there's a really tough class I'm taking, and maybe I really want to get an A in it. But go back to what I was saying about that myth of meritocracy. I really don't want people walking away showing, I got to prove myself this court. This is not the term to be proving yourself at all. We're all working under very adverse conditions. I would just encourage folks to speak to an academic advisor and to speak to faculty if you're just having a question about pass, no pass. I think there's a myth that that for some reason, if you're showing pass, no pass is because of weakness. That ties into our mental health support. And hopefully your institutions are offering remote student psychological services. Chris Lamb brought up a really good point. Sometimes they cannot serve you if you're in a different state. So these are some of the things that you all have to consider. Sam, you've been so patient. Thank you for letting me speak. You're ready.
Sure, thank you so much. Tying back in with the mental health, at my institution, William and Mary, we've been really slow from an institutional standpoint to provide resources for first-gen and low-income students, which is very frustrating. So the students have kind of taken it upon themselves. So we have like a recognized student organization that's trying to just do everything and putting a lot of burden on ourselves. But I am one of the graduate advisors for that group, and we did a Zoom party yesterday. And I think for everybody, just the way their facial reactions were when they just got a chance to be around people that understood the situation that they were in, it was really, really powerful. Just to have that community and bring that community back. And I'm fortunate enough that I'm a graduate assistant in our career center. So I'm hosting a special career workshop for people to try, or for our first gen group, to try and help them understand what's going on during this time. You know, I'm trying to pull all my resources from NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, just to kind of help them figure out what they can do during this time to keep their motivation up, keep their spirits up. But for mental health, I think the Zoom parties, and especially Zoom parties with people that are similar to them, has just been transformational.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was thanking you though, Sam. In the Nori, we spoke a lot at you. You have responses to the past follow-up questions, or you want to go to another topic altogether? Oh, what happened?
I want to say thank you for all. I'm really going to take in consideration also, like, I know many students that aren't under their scholarship, so I can able like share that with others.
Thank you for asking the question. I'm sure you weren't the only one who had that question.
Thank you.
Other things that that are on your mind, that are pressing, or that you were hoping to get from this conversation today, but we hadn't gotten to yet? Oh, Chris asked about your mental health. I can't forget that. If anyone has anything else they'd like to add about that. Carl is saying here that he recommends self-care over attempting to show off academically in this time. Borrow a hashtag real college line that students are humans first. And then, oh, this is a great question. Thank you for asking it, Brianna, any advice for first-gen low-income graduate students transitioning into the job market? Woo, child. Terry, Matt, Corey, Sam seconds that. Someone asked, Corey asked, which job market, which field? Who asked the question in the first place? Oh, Brianna did. Brianna, I'm gonna unmute you.
Matt with a hand raise as well.
Oh, hold on.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm a second-year grad student. I'm currently in a higher ed program, and I'm looking to move into res life just based on the economic needs that I need to fulfill. And right now, there's a list of over like 200 plus schools who have instituted hiring freezes. So I guess what I'm wondering is, what is your advice for first-gen low-income students who don't have their families to depend on when it comes to the job search? Like at this point, I've had 3 different institutions email me in the middle of a search saying like, we loved your application, but we can't move forward with interviews right now.
Yep, we feel you. Matt, I don't know if Matt was going to take that on, but we'll still discuss it. Go ahead, Matt.
So I'm not going to pretend to have any great answers to this, but just a couple of things. For those who, I mean, in your particular case, who are looking to move into higher ed as their industry, I will say that I'm actually part of a job search right now, where even though we've frozen hiring at our institution, since we started the search, we're at least getting to the point where we're going to conduct interviews, letting our candidates know what the conditions are, and we hope to still be able to proceed once that freeze opens up. So I still think, even though no one knows what's going to happen, you kind of can still lean into setting yourself up to be ready once things open up again, because that time will come. And for anyone who's in that situation, no matter the industry, I mean, my main advice would be just like really like push hard at your career services folks to help you navigate all this. You know, it's always been true that all universities, all colleges want their students to get jobs because it makes them look good, for no other reason, if just that, and now more than ever. So I would really like reach out to those folks, like tell them what your needs are, like have them help you, and you know, they'll do the best they can. And obviously everyone's going to be struggling a lot right now, but at least you know you have that resource, which a lot of people who are out working in industry who've been laid off, they don't have that because they're not even in college. So you have that benefit, and those people are looking to help you right now. So that would just be my main piece of advice.
I want to co-sign on that, Matt. I was writing a bunch of notes here. Not only reaching out to your career services, but make sure that it is first gen specific, because they'll give you the like generic stuff all day long. Oh, we're doing a CV and resume workshop, but if it's not speaking to your particular situation, it's just not going to resonate, right? It's not going to be as helpful to you. I would also other sources of support might include alumni services as well. Especially if there's some, you all may be, chances are the pioneers are right here. We know we're fortunate at UCLA to have a specific first-gen alumni network, but some of you may not. Some of you may be actually establishing the first-gen alumni network. Even if you don't have that on your campus, alumni services also double as career services. So just reaching out to folks on LinkedIn, coming to events like this, that Facebook group that I mentioned, people post jobs in that empowering first gen students group. So just putting yourselves out there. And another thing I just wanted to say to those of you who are not yet in graduate school, that in fact, the first gen identity actually may be even more salient to you. You may feel even more first gen in grad and professional school than you do right now in undergrad, because there are fewer of us. That's not anything to be sad about, but it is a reality check for you. So just make sure that you're finding those bonds and those networks now, and then find your people when you go to graduate school. I'm getting some cosigns down here in the chat. Let's see, someone said, yes, Matt agreed about working any networks that you have, higher education, Facebook page. There's kind of Facebook groups and pages for almost any field right now. There's several ones for higher ed. Some of them are like race and ethnicity specific. Some are student affairs specific. And then for others of you who are in other fields too, just kind of type up some keywords and see what comes up. And then John asked, how might I navigate becoming an adjunct professor, school worker to help graduate school get paid for? Whew. And so John, that is going to be entirely institution dependent. Not every institution will pay for your graduate school where you work. But some other people, Matt, let me put your hand down. Actually, other people may have some suggestions there. Or if other people just have any other thoughts or comments to make about field of study. Matt is asking you what field. Other things on your, yep, good, private chat, awesome. Make good use of those private chats. Other topics that we want to cover. Chris, what didn't we talk about? Chris Lamb, what else?
Yeah, so well, let's see. Let's go back to your question, or your responses to the forms. So student organized resources, this was not something that came up a lot, but where it did, it was really interesting because I don't know if you guys have seen the rise of mutual aid spreadsheets. So Wesleyan has the biggest, baddest, bestest one I've seen so far. As of like 2 weeks ago, there were over 100 alumni offering off campus, or like I guess near campus housing options for students who can't go home, but also who can't stay on campus. But not only that, they've raised several $1,000s into an emergency fund. I don't want to share my screen because there's like, identifying information, but the tabs, there's like a housing tab, storage tab, emotional/spiritual support tab, transportation, although I'm not sure how social distancing is going to work with that, food, healthcare help. We have people who are healthcare workers posting on there, a dedicated international students tab. I'm wondering if I had mentioned it in the chat earlier, but if anybody has like resources like that, or a template for that kind of resource. Yeah, like if Trinity has that, like I wonder if you guys can at least like anonymize it and send us a template and say, like, I mean, it's gonna be probably like tab 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 and that's it. But I just want I guess folks to know that this is something that has gotten some success in some schools. So wondering if any other schools have that besides Trinity.
Looking grim.
Yeah.
I know that Harvard raised through their alumni, through their first gen alumni network, were able to raise thousands of dollars as well. I just wanted to say, because first I wanted to acknowledge that it was expressed a couple of times that students, I want to read it the way it was said, that's about students having to advocate for themselves. So, and that is very frustrating. However, having said that, I also want to say that you all are for sure the pioneers and the folks who will make a difference. And it's very easy for me to sit here now with a PhD, with 2 children of my own who are in college, but you don't know me before that. And so know that I too came from a low, in this case, of course, first gen, but also from a low income working class background. And so I am able to provide and create the things that I wish I had had as a student. And so whatever you decide to do or create or share with your administrators, the ripple effect will go far for sure. I know you're tired. I know you all have a lot to do, a lot of real life stuff to think about, but know that you can make an impact on your institution. What I'm seeing is a lot of institutions unable to pivot, to be honest, and so they need to hear from you. I think Chris Lamb had said this earlier as well. There are some institutions, especially community colleges, who've been very swift and very deft, but other four-year institutions are really struggling. And so you're going to have to, honestly, you may have to help your school help you. Chris Sinclair said there are students at various schools have been working together to compile a list of resources. The key students at various schools, but although I do want to acknowledge folks like the Matt, Corey, Fatima, et cetera, who are here clearly passionate about supporting your students. Want to thank your presence too.
I'm wondering if, sorry to go ahead and, I'm wondering if, so there's the Flip National document that you had mentioned, Chris, but there's also the university responses document compiled by students who attended the IVG conference. So that one wasn't canceled because it was in February. And that one had like 20 different schools, students from 20 different schools, like compile, like, so for each school, here are updates, like day by day updates on what your school's policies are. In some cases, I think Pomona College had a play-by-play that revealed like just like so many different pivots, but in some other schools had mutual aid. Like, so like that's where I found Wellesley's. Oh, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so it's been growing. There's a lot of colleges on there. If I know Yoshmar had messaged and might be adding Case Western to that. If any others, students want to add to that, but also staff, like I wonder if there's a document like that staff are doing collaboratively out there, and perhaps, like, I think it would make the most sense to mash these documents together so that everybody has complete information.
Sounds good.
I don't know. Does that exist out there?
What, a complete mashup?
No, like our staff and admins and faculty putting something like that together, or is it sort of on a school by school basis?
School by school is what I've seen.
Okay.
What are ways for people to stay in touch with either you, Chris Lamb, or you, Chris Sinclair?
So we're on social media, Twitter, Align Conference, Facebook, like our page, Align, AL1GN, and hit us up on, and also join our listserv, align.leadership@gmail.com. That's where you got the Zoom link from. That's how you get in touch with us.
John asked a great question about LinkedIn, and I absolutely agree. That would be a good place another way to stay connected.
I need to get on LinkedIn.
Oh my God, Chris, you're fired. I don't go by any aliases. You could just type in Latanya Rease Miles. You'll find me on LinkedIn. You'll find me. You can follow me on Twitter, but I'm funnier on Facebook. But
can't confirm.
And then if for a more lighthearted thing, I'll put in First Gen and Juice, which is on Instagram, which is just a way of tracking first gens in popular culture. So that's myself and my mentee. So Marissa, you're quick. I see you already. If there's, let's see, hold on. I'm seeing some comments here. Yeah. Oh, Matt, that's right. Stephen King's First Gen. There's some good, fun facts, y'all, that you can find. Woody Harrelson, etc. So if there's nothing else, are there comments? People are. I'll just pause for a minute because people are putting in contact information and things like that. I'm just so grateful for all of you today and you sharing your stories and hearing from you all over the country. I don't know if you heard at the beginning, I'm from the DC area, so it's nice that Catholic was represented in University of Maryland and William and Mary. So I don't hear those names on a regular basis anymore. So it feels a bit of like a homecoming for me. But I will be, like I said, sharing some of the major themes that I heard with folks, that hopefully we can spread the word all over the place. Anything else? Chris, I'll let you close us out. This is your event, man.
I don't know, LT, you really made it yours. So thank you for moderating, but also thank you everybody for coming. I did not know what to expect. Like I was, my nightmares, I woke up last night thinking there'd be like 4 people on this call and nobody would answer. But really appreciate y'all for sharing. We'll send out resources mentioned in this call to the emails that you guys registered from, and let's stay in touch. If y'all want to get in touch with one another, we can message align.leadership@gmail.com and we can connect you guys or find each other. And yeah, so this is going to be the first of several webinars. We'll have 2 more next Saturday, and they'll be on applying for med school and how to get a job. Well, so that was how to get a job in a non-coronavirus era. We will have to adapt that in the next 7 days. And so we'll have more information on the time and the Zoom link and everything. But stay tuned for that. So this might be not the last time you guys see each other's faces. +1 to Matt's comment. Hopefully in a year we'll all see each other in person.
Definitely. And I'll just say, I'm gonna put Brenda on the spot because I've known Brenda a long time, since you were a freshman, Brenda, something like that. And now she's a doctoral student. All that to say, there's a strong capability that you won't get rid of me. So for better or for worse. Through 2 different institutions, I've known Brenda. So great. All right, everyone. It's so great spending time with you today on Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.